In the vast emptiness of space, far from Earth and its familiar blue skies, a starship named the SS Horizon drifted silently among the stars. The ship was on a mission to explore uncharted regions of the galaxy, searching for anything that could expand humanity's understanding of the universe. On board, Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen in front of him. The sensors had picked up something unusual, an energy signature coming from a nearby asteroid field. It wasn't like anything they'd seen before. Ryan turned to his crew, his voice calm but firm. "We need to check this out," he said. His words carried weight, and everyone knew better than to question him. He was a man who led by example, always putting the safety of his crew first, while still pushing the boundaries of exploration. With a nod, he selected a small team to investigate. Lieutenant Grace Miller, the ship's tactical officer, Dr. Eric Dawson, the chief scientist, and Ensign Alex Brooks, a young but eager member of the engineering staff. The team boarded a small shuttle and set off toward the asteroid field. The asteroids floated lazily around them, their jagged surfaces glinting in the light of a distant star. As they approached one of the larger rocks, Grace noticed something strange. Embedded in the surface were what looked like metallic pods, each about the size of a human body. They shimmered faintly, as if alive. "What are those?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and unease. Dr. Dawson leaned forward, his eyes wide with excitement. "I don't know, but we need to take a closer look," he said. Carefully, the team landed the shuttle and stepped out onto the asteroid's rocky surface. The air was silent except for the sound of their boots crunching against the ground. As they approached one of the pods, they saw it more clearly. It was smooth and metallic, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. Inside, something moved faintly, causing the entire group to freeze. Grace raised her weapon instinctively, though she wasn't sure what good it would do against something so alien. "Is it alive?" she whispered. Dr. Dawson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he ran his scanner over the pod, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a moment, he spoke. "Yes, whatever is inside, it's alive, but dormant. This is incredible. We've never seen anything like this before." Ryan's voice crackled over the comms. "What's your status?" "Captain, you need to see this," Grace replied. "It's hard to explain." After a brief discussion, the team decided to bring one of the pods back to the Horizon for further study. Using the shuttle's equipment, they carefully detached it from the asteroid and secured it inside the cargo bay. As they made their way back to the ship, no one spoke. The pod seemed to radiate an aura of mystery, and each member of the team couldn't help but wonder what secrets it held. Back on the Horizon, the pod was taken to the science lab. Dr. Dawson wasted no time in setting up his instruments, eager to unlock its mysteries. Grace stayed nearby, her hand resting on her weapon just in case. Alex watched with wide eyes, fascinated and slightly terrified by the unknown creature inside. As the hours passed, the pod began to emit a soft hum, almost like it was responding to the ship's systems. Dr. Dawson adjusted his scanners, trying to get a clearer reading. "This thing, it's not just some random organism," he muttered. "It's engineered, designed for something." "What do you mean?" Grace asked, her voice tight. "I mean," Dawson replied slowly, "this might be the most dangerous thing we've ever encountered. And yet, it's also the most fascinating." Unbeknownst to them, the creature inside the pod was beginning to stir. Far from being just a specimen for study, it was waking up, and it had no intention of staying confined. Back on the SS Horizon, the pod sat in the science lab, its metallic surface reflecting the dim lights of the room. Dr. Eric Dawson was completely absorbed in his work, running test after test on the mysterious object. Lieutenant Grace Miller stood nearby, her arms crossed and her sharp eyes scanning the pod for any sign of movement. Ensign Alex Brooks hovered nervously at the edge of the room, unsure whether to feel excited or terrified. The hum from the pod had grown louder, almost like a heartbeat, filling the silence with an unsettling rhythm. "This is incredible," Dawson muttered, barely looking up from his instruments. "The structure of this thing, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. It's not just alive. It's advanced." Grace frowned. "Advanced doesn't mean safe, Doctor. We don't know what's inside that thing, or what it might do if it wakes up." Dawson waved her off, too focused to listen. "We'll never learn anything if we're too afraid to take risks. This could be the discovery of a lifetime." Grace wanted to argue, but she knew better than to waste her breath. Dawson was stubborn, especially when it came to science. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire. She glanced at Alex, who looked even more uneasy than before. "Stay alert," she told him. "If something happens, I want you ready to act." As the hours passed, the pod began to change. Tiny cracks appeared along its surface, glowing faintly as if heated from within. Dawson leaned closer, his excitement growing. "It's breaking out of stasis," he said. "This is it. We're about to see what's inside." But Grace didn't share his enthusiasm. She raised her weapon, aiming it cautiously at the pod. "Doctor, step back," she ordered. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Before Dawson could respond, the pod let out a loud crack, and the cracks widened into fractures. With a sudden burst of energy, the top of the pod split open, revealing the creature inside. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, its body sleek and muscular, covered in a shimmering exoskeleton that glowed faintly in the dim light. Its eyes, large and black, seemed to pierce through them. For a moment, no one moved. The creature lay still, its chest rising and falling slowly as if catching its breath. Then, without warning, it twitched. Its clawed hands flexed, and its head turned slightly, taking in its surroundings. Dawson gasped, stepping forward instinctively. "It's magnificent," he whispered. "Stay back," Grace shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. She kept her weapon trained on the creature, her finger hovering over the trigger. The creature's movements became more deliberate. It pushed itself up, sitting upright, its gaze locking onto Dawson. For a brief second, it almost seemed curious, tilting its head as if studying him. But then, with startling speed, it lunged forward. Grace fired a warning shot, the blast hitting the wall just inches from the creature's head. The sound startled it, and it froze, its sharp teeth bared in a snarl. Dawson stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his equipment. "Don't provoke it," he yelled, though his voice trembled. Alex, who had been frozen in place, finally snapped into action. He grabbed a containment device from the counter and activated it, creating a force field around the creature. The barrier crackled as the creature slammed against it, testing its strength. It growled low in its throat, a sound that sent chills down everyone's spines. Grace lowered her weapon slightly, though she remained cautious. "That was too close," she said, her voice tight. Dawson, still shaken, nodded reluctantly. "Maybe we should reconsider keeping it here," he admitted. But it was already too late. The creature wasn't just awake, it was learning. Every movement, every reaction, was being processed by its sharp mind. And as it studied them from behind the force field, it became clear that it wasn't going to stay contained forever. Captain Ryan Carter arrived moments later, alerted by the commotion. His expression hardened as he took in the scene. The glowing pod, the angry creature, and his visibly shaken crew. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. Grace sighed, lowering her weapon completely. "We found something extraordinary, Captain, but I'm not sure we're ready for it." Ryan stared at the creature, his jaw tightening. Whatever it was dangerous. And now, it was aboard their ship. The creature remained behind the force field, its glowing eyes fixed on the humans who surrounded it. Captain Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the lab, his arms crossed and his face unreadable. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Dr. Eric Dawson was still trying to calm himself after the close call, while Lieutenant Grace Miller kept her weapon close, ready for anything. Ensign Alex Brooks had retreated to a corner, looking pale and unsure of what to do next. Ryan finally broke the silence. "Someone tell me exactly what happened here," he said, his tone firm but controlled. Grace stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We brought the pod back like we planned. When it opened, the creature woke up. It didn't attack right away. It seemed curious. But then it lunged at Dawson. We managed to contain it with the force field, but it's strong, Captain. Stronger than it looks." Ryan turned his gaze to the creature. It was pacing now, moving back and forth along the edge of the barrier. Every so often, it would stop and stare at them, its sharp teeth glinting in the light. "Curious or not, that thing is dangerous," Ryan said. "We need to figure out what to do with it. Fast." Dawson, eager to defend his decision, chimed in. "Captain, this is a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. This creature could teach us things about biology, evolution, even alien technology. We can't just throw it away because it's unpredictable." Ryan shot him a sharp look. "Unpredictable. That thing nearly killed you, Doctor. And now it's on my ship, loose in my lab. Do you have any idea what could happen if it gets out?" Before Dawson could respond, the creature let out a low growl, louder this time. It slammed its clawed hand against the force field, causing the barrier to flicker briefly. Everyone froze, their eyes locked on the creature as it tilted its head, studying them with an almost human-like intelligence. "We're running out of time," Grace said quietly. "If the force field fails, or if it finds a way to break it, we're in serious trouble." Ryan nodded, his mind racing. "Options. Give me options." Grace spoke first. "We seal off this section of the ship and reinforce the barrier. If it breaks free, at least it won't be able to reach the rest of the crew." Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, who had just entered the lab, shook his head. "That's not enough. Look at it. It's not some dumb animal. It's learning, adapting. Sooner or later, it'll find a way out. The only safe option is to neutralize it." "Neutralize?" Dawson snapped, stepping forward. "You mean kill it? That's barbaric. We don't even know what it is yet." Lucas glared at him. "And you want to wait until it tears us apart to find out? I'm not risking the lives of everyone on this ship for your science project." The argument grew heated, voices rising as both men refused to back down. Ryan raised a hand, silencing them. "Enough. Both of you have valid points, but we need to act, not argue." He turned to Grace. "How long can the force field hold?" Grace hesitated, glancing at the barrier. "It's strong, but not indestructible. If it keeps hitting it like that, maybe a few hours, less if it finds a weak spot." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "All right. Here's what we'll do. We lock down this area and monitor it around the clock. No one goes in or out unless absolutely necessary. In the meantime, we work on finding a way to either sedate it or transport it back to where we found it." Dawson looked relieved, while Lucas scowled but nodded reluctantly. As the group began to disperse, the creature made another move. It crouched low, its muscles tensing, and then leaped at the force field with incredible speed. The barrier held, but the impact sent a shockwave through the room, knocking Alex off his feet. "That's it," Grace muttered, raising her weapon again. "We're running out of time." Ryan watched the creature closely, his expression grim. Whatever they decided to do, one thing was clear. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. The lives of everyone on the *SS Horizon* depended on it. The creature's attack on the force field had left everyone shaken. Even though the barrier held, the sheer power it displayed was alarming. Captain Ryan Carter stood in the lab, his mind racing as he tried to come up with a plan. The crew was divided, and tensions were running high. Some wanted to find a way to study the creature further, while others argued that it was too dangerous to keep aboard the ship. Grace Miller suggested sealing off the lab entirely, creating a buffer zone between the creature and the rest of the crew. "We can't risk it breaking free," she said firmly. "If we lock down this section, we limit the damage it can do if it escapes." Lucas Ford, the chief engineer, wasn't satisfied with that idea. He crossed his arms and shook his head. "Sealing it off isn't enough. That thing is smart. It's already shown us that. Sooner or later, it'll figure out how to break through. We need to end this now, before it gets worse." Dr. Eric Dawson, still determined to save the creature, stepped forward. "You're talking about killing it without even trying to understand it. This is a living being, a highly advanced one at that. If we destroy it, we're no better than the people who exploit weaker species for profit or power." The argument grew louder, with voices overlapping as each person tried to make their case. Alex Brooks stayed quiet, standing near the door and watching the creature. It hadn't moved much since its last attempt to break free, but its glowing eyes never stopped scanning the room. It felt like it was waiting. For what, Alex couldn't say. Ryan raised his hand, cutting through the noise. "Enough," he barked. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "We don't have time for this. The creature is contained, for now, but we need to act fast. Grace, I want you to reinforce the lockdown. Double-check every seal, every system. Lucas, work with engineering to strengthen the force field. And Dawson." He paused, looking at the scientist. "You get one chance. Find a way to sedate it or calm it down. But if anything goes wrong, we're taking more drastic measures." "Understood." Everyone nodded, though Lucas still looked unhappy. As they began to carry out their tasks, Ryan stayed behind, staring at the creature. There was something unsettling about the way it watched them, as if it was studying them just as much as they were studying it. Later that night, the ship was quiet except for the hum of the engines. Most of the crew had gone to bed, leaving only a skeleton team to monitor the situation. In the lab, 2 security officers kept watch over the creature, their weapons ready. The creature remained still, its breathing slow and steady. For a moment, it almost seemed peaceful. But then, without warning, it moved. With a sudden burst of speed, it slammed into the force field again, harder than before. The barrier flickered dangerously, and alarms blared throughout the lab. The security officers shouted into their comms, calling for backup. Grace arrived within minutes, her weapon drawn. She assessed the situation quickly. "It's weakening the field," she said. "We need to evacuate this area now." As the team scrambled to leave, the creature let out a piercing screech. It leaped at the barrier one last time, and this time, the force field collapsed. Sparks flew as the energy dissipated, and the creature landed gracefully on the floor, free at last. For a moment, it stood still, its head tilted as if deciding what to do next. Then, with terrifying speed, it lunged toward the nearest exit. Shots rang out as the security officers fired, but the creature dodged effortlessly, its movements too quick to follow. Grace cursed under her breath. Containment breach. "Seal all doors to this section," she shouted into her comm. Ryan's voice came back immediately. "What's happening?" "It's loose," Grace replied, her voice tight with urgency. "And it's heading straight for the crew quarters." The creature disappeared into the shadows, leaving chaos in its wake. The crew scrambled to prepare for the worst, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether they lived or died. The creature moved through the ship with terrifying speed, its glowing eyes cutting through the dimly lit corridors like twin searchlights. It wasn't just fast, it was smart. Every movement it made seemed calculated, as if it were mapping out the ship and learning its layout. The crew scrambled to respond, sealing off sections of the *SS Horizon* in a desperate attempt to contain it. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, their shrill tones adding to the growing panic. Grace Miller led a small team of security officers, her weapon drawn and her mind racing. She had faced dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just an animal, it was a predator, one that seemed to understand its surroundings better with each passing moment. "We need to slow it down," she said into her comm, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Set up noise generators and block its path. Keep it away from the living quarters." Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his face grim as he monitored the situation. "Status report," he demanded, his voice cutting through the chatter on the comms. "It's heading toward Deck 3, Grace replied. "We've sealed off 2 access points, but it's finding alternate routes. It's adaptive, Captain. Faster than we can anticipate." Ryan clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "Dawson, any progress on sedation?" Dr. Eric Dawson's voice came back, strained and hurried. "I'm working on it, but I need more time. The chemical compounds we have might not even affect it. Its biology is too different. It could resist anything we try." "Time is something we don't have," Ryan shot back. He turned to Lucas Ford, who stood nearby. "Lucas, what about the force fields? Can we set up another containment zone?" Lucas shook his head, not without risking the structural integrity of the ship. "If we overload the systems trying to trap it, we could lose life support in half the vessel. We're walking a fine line here, Captain." As the crew worked frantically to slow the creature's advance, it reached a junction in the corridor. For a moment, it paused, its sharp claws clicking softly against the metal floor. Then, with sudden clarity, it chose a direction, straight toward the engineering bay. Grace cursed under her breath when she heard the update. "It's going for the core systems," she said. "If it gets into engineering, it could disable the ship entirely." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We can't let that happen. Grace, get there first. Set traps if you have to, but stop it at all costs." Grace and her team sprinted through the ship, their boots pounding against the deck. They reached the engineering bay moments before the creature did, setting up makeshift barriers and arming themselves with stun rifles. "Stay sharp," Grace ordered. "This thing doesn't play by our rules." When the creature arrived, it didn't hesitate. It leaped over the barriers with ease, its movements fluid and precise. Shots rang out as the security team opened fire, but the creature twisted and dodged, avoiding every blast. One officer stumbled backward, tripping over a cable, and the creature pounced. Before it could strike, Grace fired a concentrated burst of energy directly at it. The blast hit its mark, causing the creature to recoil with a guttural roar. For a brief moment, it faltered, shaking its head as if disoriented. Grace seized the opportunity, shouting orders to her team. "Now, push it back." Working together, they managed to herd the creature into a narrow corridor, where its agility was less of an advantage. Using portable force field projectors, they trapped it temporarily, buying themselves precious minutes. Back in the lab, Dawson worked feverishly, mixing chemicals and running simulations. He finally held up a syringe filled with a shimmering blue liquid. "This might work," he said urgently, "but someone needs to get close enough to administer it." Ryan nodded. "Grace, take the sedative and finish this. But be careful, it's still unpredictable." Grace took the syringe, her expression resolute. As she approached the trapped creature, she felt a strange mix of fear and awe. It stared at her, its black eyes gleaming with intelligence. For a moment, she wondered if it understood what she was about to do. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to end the standoff once and for all. Grace Miller held the syringe tightly in her hand, her heart pounding as she approached the trapped creature. The portable force field shimmered faintly, holding the predator in place, but it didn't seem intimidated. Its glowing eyes locked onto her, sharp and calculating, as if it could sense her intentions. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, her weapon raised in one hand and the sedative in the other. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, though her voice barely carried over the hum of the barrier. Behind her, the rest of the security team stood ready, their weapons trained on the creature in case it broke free again. Grace knew this was a risky move. If the creature reacted violently, there would be no time to retreat. But they had no other choice. The creature tilted its head slightly, studying her with an unsettling intensity. It let out a low growl, the sound reverberating through the narrow corridor. Grace froze for a moment, then forced herself to keep moving. "Easy," she said softly, as if trying to reassure both the creature and herself. When she was close enough, she extended her arm toward the barrier. The syringe was designed to inject through energy fields, but she still needed to be precise. Her hand trembled slightly as she lined up the shot, her focus absolute. Just as she pressed the trigger, the creature lunged at the barrier with explosive force. The field flickered dangerously, and Grace stumbled back, nearly dropping the syringe. The creature slammed into the barrier again, its claws scraping against the invisible wall. Sparks flew, and the force field collapsed with a loud crack. "Fall back," Grace shouted, turning to retreat. But before she could move, the creature pounced, landing just inches away from her. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its razor-sharp claws, and fired her weapon instinctively. The blast hit the creature's shoulder, causing it to roar in pain but not slowing it down. The security team opened fire, their shots lighting up the corridor. The creature darted left and right, evading most of the blasts with unnatural speed. One officer was caught off guard as it swiped at him, sending him crashing into the wall. Grace scrambled to her feet, clutching the syringe tightly. "Distracted," she yelled, drawing the creature's attention. She waved her arms, shouting to get its focus. The creature turned toward her, its black eyes narrowing. For a split second, it hesitated, almost as if weighing its options. Then it charged. Grace braced herself, knowing she only had one chance. As the creature closed the distance between them, she sidestepped at the last moment and drove the syringe into its side. The needle pierced its exoskeleton with a faint hiss, releasing the sedative. The creature let out a deafening screech, thrashing wildly as the drug began to take effect. It swung its claws blindly, forcing Grace and the others to dive out of the way. But within moments, its movements slowed. Its glowing eyes dimmed, and it staggered, struggling to stay upright. Finally, with a heavy thud, it collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. Grace leaned against the wall, breathing heavily as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "It's down," she said into her comm, her voice shaking with relief. Captain Ryan Carter arrived moments later, his expression a mix of concern and relief. "Good work," he said, glancing at the sedated creature. "Now what?" "We need to secure it properly this time," Grace replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "No more chances." Ryan nodded. "Agreed. Get it back to the lab and reinforce the containment systems. And Dawson." He turned to the scientist, who had followed him to the scene. "Make sure that thing stays asleep." As the crew worked to move the creature, Grace couldn't help but feel uneasy. They had won this battle, but the war wasn't over. The creature was intelligent, adaptive, and dangerous, and it was still aboard their ship. Later, as the creature lay once again behind a reinforced barrier, Dr. Dawson studied it closely. "It's remarkable," he murmured. "Even after everything, it's still alive, still fighting." Grace crossed her arms, her tone sharp. "Let's hope it stays that way. Under control." But deep down, she knew the real challenge was far from over. The creature might be sedated now, but its presence on the *SS Horizon* was a constant reminder of how fragile their situation truly was. The creature lay motionless behind the reinforced barrier, its chest rising and falling slowly as the sedative kept it unconscious. Dr. Eric Dawson stood nearby, his eyes glued to the monitors that tracked its vital signs. The readings were unlike anything he had ever seen. Complex patterns that hinted at a level of intelligence far beyond what they had anticipated. "It's not just reacting," he muttered to himself. "It's thinking. Even now, while it's asleep, its brain activity is off the charts." Grace Miller watched him from across the lab, her arms crossed and her expression wary. She didn't trust the creature, no matter how fascinating Dawson found it. Thinking or not, it almost killed us, she said sharply. We can't afford to let our guard down again. Dawson glanced at her, his excitement momentarily dimmed by her skepticism. I'm not saying we should lower our defenses, but if we could communicate with it, even in some basic way, maybe we could avoid another attack. It might not be hostile. It could just be scared. Grace raised an eyebrow. Scared? That thing tore through half the ship like it owned the place. It's a predator, Doctor. Predators don't get scared. They hunt. Dawson hesitated, unsure how to respond. He turned back to the monitors, scrolling through data and running simulations. If there was any chance of understanding the creature, he knew they had to act quickly. It wouldn't stay sedated forever, and when it woke up, they needed to be ready. Over the next few hours, Dawson worked tirelessly, enlisting the help of Sophie Bennett, the ship's linguist. Together, they analyzed recordings of the creature's growls and screeches, searching for patterns or rhythms that might indicate communication. They also studied the faint clicking sounds it made during its attacks, theorizing that these could be a form of echolocation or even a language. We need to test this, Dawson said finally, holding up a small device. If we play back its own sounds, altered slightly, it might respond. It's worth a try. Grace frowned. And if it doesn't like what it hears? What then? We'll have security on standby, Dawson assured her. But we can't keep treating it like a mindless animal. If it's intelligent, we owe it a chance to prove it. Reluctantly, Grace agreed to the experiment. The team set up speakers around the containment area, feeding in modified versions of the creature's sounds. At first, there was no reaction. The creature remained still, its breathing steady. But after several minutes, something changed. Its ears twitched, and its glowing eyes flickered beneath closed lids. Then suddenly, it let out a low hum, a sound deeper and more resonant than anything they had recorded before. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the lab. Dawson's eyes widened. It's responding, he whispered. This is incredible. Sophie adjusted the frequency of the playback, trying to match the pitch of the creature's hum. Slowly, the two sounds began to synchronize, creating a rhythmic pattern that filled the room. The creature shifted slightly, its claws flexing as if testing its surroundings. Grace gripped her weapon tightly, watching every movement. Don't get too close, she warned. Just because it's responding doesn't mean it's friendly. As the experiment continued, the creature's reactions became more deliberate. It tilted its head toward the speakers, its glowing eyes opening halfway. For a moment, it seemed to study them, its sharp gaze sweeping over the team. Then, unexpectedly, it let out a series of rapid clicks, followed by a low growl. Dawson's hands flew over the controls, recording the new sounds. It's trying to communicate, he said, his voice trembling with excitement. This is real. We're making contact. Grace wasn't convinced. Or it's figuring out how to manipulate us, she said darkly. We need to be careful. Just because it's smart doesn't mean it's safe. Captain Ryan Carter entered the lab just as the creature let out another series of clicks. He listened intently, his expression unreadable. What's going on here? He asked. Dawson turned to him, barely able to contain his enthusiasm. Captain, it's working. The creature is responding to our signals. It's intelligent, far more than we thought. Ryan stared at the creature, his jaw tightening. Intelligent or not, it's still dangerous. Keep pushing, but don't take unnecessary risks. If this thing turns on us again, we won't get a second chance. As the team continued their work, the creature remained eerily calm, its glowing eyes fixed on them. It was clear that it understood something about the sounds being played back, but whether it saw them as friends, foes, or something else entirely, no one could say. And as the hum of its responses echoed through the lab, one thing was certain: they were playing a dangerous game, one that could change everything they knew about life beyond Earth. The hum of the creature's responses filled the lab, a sound that was both fascinating and unsettling. Dr. Eric Dawson and Sophie Bennett worked tirelessly, adjusting frequencies and analyzing patterns, trying to decipher the meaning behind the clicks and growls. Captain Ryan Carter stood nearby, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. He trusted Dawson's expertise, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a thin line between discovery and disaster. Grace Miller remained on edge, her weapon never far from her side. She didn't care how intelligent the creature was. It had already proven it could be deadly. "We're playing with fire," she muttered to Ryan when Dawson wasn't listening. "What happens if it decides we're a threat again?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Then we'll deal with it. But for now, we need to see this through. If Dawson's right, this could change everything." As the hours passed, the creature grew more responsive. Its movements were slow and deliberate, as if it were testing its surroundings. Every time the team played back a modified version of its sounds, it answered with new variations, each one more complex than the last. Sophie scribbled notes furiously, her excitement growing. "It's like it's learning," she said, "adapting to our signals. This isn't just instinct, it's communication." Dawson nodded, his face glowing with pride. "Exactly. It's not just reacting to us, it's engaging. We're building a bridge." But not everyone shared their optimism. Security Officer Maya Torres, who had been stationed outside the lab, leaned in through the doorway. "A bridge to what?" she asked bluntly. "If it figures out how to break free again, all this communication won't matter." Grace shot her a sharp look. "She's got a point. We're forgetting how dangerous this thing is." Before anyone could respond, Chief Engineer Lucas Ford entered the lab, his face pale and tense. "Captain, we've got a problem," he said. "Someone tampered with the containment systems. The barriers are weaker than they should be." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, tampered?" Lucas hesitated, glancing at the creature. "I don't know yet, but someone bypassed the safety protocols. If that thing wakes up before we fix it..." Ryan didn't need him to finish the sentence. "Find out who did it, and fast," he ordered, "and get those systems back online." As Lucas hurried away, Grace stepped closer to the barrier, studying the creature. It seemed calm for now, its glowing eyes half closed. But she couldn't ignore the tension in the room, or the sinking feeling that something was about to go wrong. Later that night, while most of the crew slept, Lucas stayed in the engineering bay, poring over the ship's logs. What he found made his blood run cold. Hidden deep within the system was a message, encrypted but unmistakable. Asterisk mission parameters updated, awaiting extraction. Asterisk. Furious, Lucas traced the source of the message to a private channel linked to an off-ship corporation. Someone on board had been communicating with them and selling out the crew. His fists clenched as he realized who it had to be. "You selfish idiot," he muttered under his breath. He confronted the traitor moments later in the cargo bay. It was none other than Lieutenant Aaron Blake, a junior officer who had kept quiet during the chaos. "Why?" Lucas demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Aaron looked guilty but defiant. "You don't understand. This thing could save humanity, if we let the right people study it. Not some amateur scientists poking around. This thing nearly killed us." Lucas snapped. "And you risked everyone on this ship for money, for fame." Aaron didn't answer, but his silence said enough. Lucas grabbed him by the arm and dragged him to the bridge, where Ryan was waiting. When the captain heard the truth, his face darkened with anger. "Lock him up," he ordered, "and make sure no one else knows about this until we figure out how to fix it." As Aaron was taken away, Ryan turned to the rest of the crew. They had stopped a betrayal, but the creature was still aboard the ship, and the barriers were still compromised. Whatever happened next, they would have to face it together.